this presentation is, I'm coming from a company, but I'm not talking about the company or anything that we do. I'm going to talk about the SSL technology and cryptography and how on the interaction of one with the other, and show that many of the attacks on SSL are targeted to cryptographic structures that are used in this protocol. Okay, so a couple of words about myself. So I'm currently director of security research at Imperva, working in the Application Defense Center, which is a research lab of the company. I did, as Ors said, I made my MSc research with Ali Shamir 13 years ago. And I'm working in security, in different security domains in the last 15 years or so. I look at my work in security as mainly problem solving in all kinds of domains in security. A couple of words about Imperva. So Imperva was founded in 2002 by Shlomo Kramer, which probably most of you know, Amichai Shulman and Miki Budai. About 600 employees. The main R&D center is in Tel Aviv. The main product of Imperva is a secure sphere. It protects web applications, it protects databases, file access, and cloud applications. The company went public in 2011 and worth like $700 or $800 million, depending on the mood of the market. Okay, so how many of you did not see this slide? No one. So most of the attacks on practical, on commercial systems do not attack the cryptography. This is something that we have seen in the past and we see also today. Cryptography usually is just bypassed. So we see many kinds of attacks. There is the advanced persistent threats that Miki was just talking about, which is kind of a malware infection, and then you don't have to decrypt anything. You just have to steal the key or steal the data itself. There is I recommend. Well, I'm bribed in this area, but I recommend a webinar on non-advanced persistent threats, which one of the guys in my team is going to give on the next week. So if anyone wants the details, just refer to me later. In the domain of web application security, context attacks like cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, probably many of you are familiar with these terms. On account authentication, phishing, usage of weak passwords, SQL injection on web servers, and of course denial of service attacks, which make different services inapplicable or unavailable without, again, all of these without touching the cryptography. So I will talk now, I'll try to give the minimal background on cryptography that is for intelligent discussion on SSL. So this is the list of Cipher suits in SSL, many of them. As you can see, there are block ciphers or stream ciphers, public key encryption schemes, digital signatures, key exchange algorithms, and hash functions. Some of my discussion will be on block ciphers. So I want to remind the notion of a block cipher encryption that encrypts blocks. And in order to encrypt more than block, then you have to use what is called the mode of operation, which is a way to concatenate a plain text block or the ciphertext blocks. There are plenty of mode of operations that can be used. The ECB1 and CBC, which I'll present in the next slides, CTR, OFB. There is a mode of operation that is called the GCM, which is kind of encryption and authentication in the same, with the same algorithm. On the other hand, there is stream ciphers. The main one that most of you are familiar with, which I spent 2 years of my life investigating it, is RC4. And the main thing you have to remember about RC4 is that as a stream cipher, you should never use the same key twice. as opposed to block ciphers where you can use the same key over and over as many times as you like. A couple of words about mode of operations. So the straightforward mode of operation is electronic codebook, ECB, where each one of the blocks is encrypted independently of the others. And this is what you see here. The trouble with the ECB mode of operation is that it has some kind of leakage of information. And if you take this nice image and encrypt it with ECB, what you will see is this. Because when you have identical blocks in the plain text, you will see identical blocks in the ciphertext. So you can see that this identity sometimes is very significant. And the main mode of operations that is used in the industry is the cipher block chaining, CBC, where there is some kind of concatenation of the encryption of the previous block as a modifier to the encryption of the next block. The ciphers that are used in SSL for the encrypting the records are mainly AES. AES, probably most of you know, it is the standard. It is as close as 100% secure as possible. The only attack that is known on it is 2 to the 126, which is very slightly more effective than brute force. And it is secure, as far as we know, in all the conventional attack models. RC4, on the other hand, is a stream cipher. As I said, you can never use the same key twice. Problem with RC4 is that it has a significant statistical weaknesses. And the beginning, the first bytes that it emits are very biased. The other bytes are also very biased. And this is known for many years. There are other ciphers like DES, triple DES, Camellia, but they are never used. No one recommends to use them, and they are you can think of them as obsolete. But when I said that AES is 100% secure in all conventional attack models, then the question is, what are the conventional attack models and how they correlate to the way AES is used in practice? So this is kind of this slide summarizes the conventional attack models as we like to speak about them in cryptographic theory. So there is the known plaintext attack. The attacker knows, sees many plaintext that are encrypted. It doesn't have any effect, any influence on the content of this plaintext, but he can encrypt as many plaintext. He can see as many encryptions as he likes. He sees the ciphertext, and he can use the ciphertext to conclude whatever he can conclude from them on the key or the messages, and try to break them. The next attack model is a chosen ciphertext attack, chosen plaintext attack. I'm sorry. In this case, the attacker can choose what is the plaintext, so he has more power than the previous one. The next one is chosen ciphertext attack, where the attacker can choose ciphertext. And the last one is adaptive chosen ciphertext attack, which is kind of a variation of chosen ciphertext attack, which I'm not going to talk about in this talk. Okay, Eli Biam is here to hear about my cryptanalysis rule number 1. The fact is that the attacker sees encryptions, as you saw in the previous slide, an decryption of gigabytes. However, he only has to try and deduce 128 bits in the typical case. So my cryptanalysis rule number 1 is that any leakage of secret information may be aggregated into effective attack on a key. If you can deduce, I don't know, 1% of a bit from seeing one pair of plaintext ciphertext, then after a couple of thousand of encryptions, you will have the complete key. So this is something that is important to remember, and I will show how it is used in some of the attacks on TLS. The next cryptographic algorithm I will talk about is public infrastructure, and in particular, I will talk about digital certificates and what is called a chain of trust. Digital signatures like RSA, ECC, elliptic curves, signatures are algorithms that allow one to sign messages and allow him to give others the capability to verify this signature. So he has the signing key, which is secret, and the others has the verification key, which is public. And no one with the ability to verify gets also the ability to sign. And the idea of the concept of chain of trust, which is used heavily in SSL and in many other cryptographic schemes, is that I have a public key. A has a public key of B, entity B, and he trusts this public key. He knows that it came from a legitimate source, from a reliable source. So A trusts B. And now if A sees the public key of C, which is a different entity, he cannot trust it. But if he sees the signature of B on C, on the public key of C, then he does trust C. And this chain can continue. So if he trusts C, he will trust any public key of D that was signed by C. And this chain goes on. And SSL uses this idea heavily. A typical SSL certificate of a web server, like, I don't know, like Amazon, like Facebook, like Gmail, you will see there something that is called the root certificate authority, which is one public key that is stored in your browser, and you trust it because you got it from Google that provided you the Chrome, or from Microsoft that provided you, that put it in Internet Explorer. And this key is going to be used to sign maybe an intermediate certificate authority, which is used to sign another certificate authority, which eventually signs the key of the web server that your browser is now communicating with. So this is essentially the picture that they will see. And if you get the properties of your browser, I'm not sure from where exactly it was taken, you will see that the top certificate is VeriSign class 3 public primary certificate authority. And you see that there are two links in this chain, with the last one is wellsfargo.com. So this chain of trust brings us to the next rule number 1, which is the security rule number 1. It's very hard to see that there is some kind of blockage here, and you see all the path that all the cars that bypassed it left, which is that the chain is as strong as its weakest link. And in security, we see this over and over in every system. There are many, you close the door, so the attacker, but if you leave the window open, then you didn't do nothing. And again, we'll see how some of the attacks on SSL attack it from different points in this chain. Okay, that is about crypto background. I'm sorry it was very short, but I wanted to get to the interesting stuff as fast as possible. Next thing I'm going to talk about is TLS or SSL. What is it? What is its trying? What does it try to obtain or to ensure? And what are the algorithms it uses for obtaining its goals? So SSL in the seven layer model, SSL is somewhere between the layer 4 and the layer 7. It encrypts the TCP connections, and many layer 7 protocols rely on it. Like the most familiar one is, of course, HTTP, but many others as well. It was developed first by Netscape in 1996, and it has many versions. The first one, SSL 1, 2, and 3. Afterwards, they migrated to TLS, Transport Layer Security, which has version 1, 1.1, and 1.2. Okay, I will skip this discussion about the adoption of different versions in browsers and servers. Essentially, all the popular browsers support the all the versions, in particular the most advanced ones, which are, in some senses, more secure than old ones. So what are the objectives of SSL? The objectives of SSL are very clear and very simple. It wants to obtain, one, web server identification and authentication, which means that if I'm a browser and I'm now browsing to my Gmail account, I want to make sure that I'm talking with Google and not with anyone else. It also provides the ability for Google to authenticate my identity, but this capability is rarely used, so it is not very interesting for this discussion. The second thing is, or the third thing, is to hide data that is communicated between me and my web server. If I enter the credit card number in a form, in a payment form, and this credit card number goes all the way to Amazon, I don't want anyone to be able, that eavesdrops on the line, will be able to read this credit card number and use it. And the last thing is data integrity, which everything that I send, I want to make sure that no one changes it on the way to Google. And the circumstances under which SSL strives to obtain all these objectives are, first, when there are passive eavesdropping attackers that just listen on the line, which is fairly simple to obtain. However, he wants to obtain it strives to obtain these objectives also in the case of active man-in-the-middle attackers, which is something that I will discuss in more details in the next slide. So the idea of man-in-the-middle attacker, so you have an SSL client, Alice, and she has this amazing password, Alice123, and she wants to send her password to an SSL server, for example, Facebook in this case. But she doesn't want anyone to read this password on the way, so she uses SSL to encrypt, to protect this communication. The attacker stands on the way, and the active man-in-the-middle assumption assumes that he has the ability to take every packet that Alice sends and either change it or send it to Facebook or not send it to Facebook or manipulate it and then send it to Facebook or try to fake a response from Facebook, which sounds a very powerful attacker, but this situation is very easy to obtain. For example, if you just take a router, okay, a wireless router, you put it in, I don't know, like in Israeli, and you start and you provide open Wi-Fi to all the users, guys with laptops, with mobile devices, and you write, you give it the SSID like open Wi-Fi Israeli or something like that, and people will connect. Once someone connects through your router, every packet that he sends goes through you. So you are actually man in the middle. You have to remember that when the next time you connect to a Wi-Fi network that you're not familiar with. Another way to do that is what is called the DNS poisoning. I will not get very deeper into it, but if someone manages to convince your browser that the DNS servers which are responsible for mapping of IPs and URLs, so you put a URL like facebook.com and you get an IP of someone else. So if someone is able to cheat these DNS servers that you use, he's able to cheat you or your browser as well. And then you think that you browse to Facebook, but you actually browse to his site, and he can do whatever he wants with your communication. So this sounds scary, but SSL comes exactly to solve that, and it solves that at least theoretically when it is not attacked. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the cryptographic algorithms and structures that SSL uses for obtaining these objectives. So the first one, for client and server identification, it uses the notion of certificates. A certificate is essentially the public key of the server, and some kind of a chain of trust, which includes a list of certificates of certificate authorities all the way up to some entity that your browser is already familiar with. And it has an handshake protocol in which the two things happen. The first one is that the client is able to authenticate the server to make sure he is really talking with the Facebook.com. And it also allows both of them to generate a key which they are going to use for encrypting and authenticating all the communication between them, which is done through some key exchange protocol. There are different flavors, different versions supported by SSL, but they are essentially secure. So what's in the certificate? A certificate includes the entity description, which is the name of the entity, its URL, if this is a web server, its type, its public key, of course. Usually it has to have an expiration date, because if this key is compromised, we don't want it to remain in the wild forever. And it has, of course, the last thing is a signature, something that will convince our browser that this certificate is proper. One thing that is very important, and it's very important not to miss it, is this type field on the top, which says whether this entity is allowed or not allowed to sign certificates of others. When I discussed a chain of trust, then I talked about A being allowed to sign something for B, which can sign for C, and etc. But when someone gives a certificate to, I don't know, to Facebook.com, it does not necessarily grant it the ability to sign further certificates of other servers. So this flag, this field is very important, and there were attacks in the past that people were able to, they sent certificate for signing that had this type field changed. And then if someone gets, I open a web server, and then I come to certificate authority, I said, please sign my certificates, they sign it. So if they accidentally signed something that has this certificate authority flag on, actually they gave me, without intention, the ability to sign as many web servers as I like. For example, I can sign someone as being Facebook.com, or Google.com, or Gmail.com, or whatever. The problem with this concept of the chain of trust is that any compromise in this chain, any signing of someone that is not trusted, is actually a compromise of the entire system. If you give, as I said, if you sign for someone a certificate that says that he can sign other certificates, he can sign whatever he wants in any domains, and he can cheat all browsers essentially to think that they're talking to any domain he'd like to. For that reason, there is the concept of certificate revocation list. When certificates are compromised, then there is a list that is managed by the SSL community that is just being sent to all the browsers. That includes all the SSL certificates that are known to be broken. Just a second. OK, we're good in time. The other objective of SSL is to protect the data. So as you can see, this is essentially how the SSL packet looks like. So there is the application data. It is fragmented. The next thing that happens is that it is compressed. This compression is important for one of the attacks that I'm going to show. So remember that. Then a message authentication code is being added to ensure authenticity of the data. And eventually, it is encrypted and sent to its target, to its recipient. This is essentially the entire picture. This is an example of SSL that is used for, I think, for FTP, file transfer. So you can see that the top the top diagram shows the SSL handshake, and the bottom diagram shows how the key that was agreed upon during the handshake is used to encrypt and sign and authenticate files. Okay, so the next thing is the next part of the talk. I will start talking about different attacks on SSL. The first set of attacks will be on the authentication scheme, on the way that SSL assists you in identifying who is the entity on the other line. And the second part will be, the last part will be on the data protection attacks. The most important thing to understand when you're looking at this authentication scheme is that it is a chain. And in this chain, there are 5 parts. And you can break this scheme if you can break any one of them. So you have a digital signature. You have a hash function. You have to verify the certificate chain of trust, which includes this CA flag I was talking about. And make sure that there is continuity, that if you see, for example, some server that has what is called self-signed certificate, which means that he signs his own certificate, then it is practically useless to look at it. You have to verify the certificate authenticity, meaning that you have to run the signature verification. And another important thing is you have to verify the host identity. For example, I'm showing you a certificate, and it is valid. It is completely valid. It has a perfect chain of trust. It starts with VeriSign. Then what exactly was I convinced in? That you are OK, or that you are someone particular? And one of the attacks that I will show later is exactly attacks this point. The first attack I'm going to discuss is a hash collision attack. The root of this attack in 2004, where the hash function MD5 was found to be weak, with many collisions being found on this hash function. Some of these collisions were what is called structured collisions, which is much, much, much worse. And in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, this collision, there was a couple of researchers, it was Lenstra, I think, and I don't remember the other names, that succeeded in generating 2 SSL certificates which have a different CA flag. And this was translated into, as far as I know, theoretical, because they didn't actually publish these, but it could be translated into practical attack, and maybe it had, I just don't know, into the following attack. Okay, you build 2 certificates, certificate A and certificate B. Now, certificate A, just a second. Okay, certificate A is a server certificate, which has no additional permissions. And certificate B has this CA flag turned on. Now, you make sure that both of them have the same hash. If both of them have the same hash, then a signature on one will be applicable also for the other. Now, you give certificate A to a certificate authority. It looks at the certificate. It looks at you. It believes you that you are, I don't know, evil.com or something like that, because this is really who you are, and it signs it. The next thing that happens is that you have a signature on a certificate that allows you to sign other certificate, and any browser in the world will believe you. It will believe you that you are Google. It will believe you that you are Facebook. It will believe you that you are Amazon, whoever you want to be. So the innocent browser will just verify the certificate that he sees. He verifies that he sees also the CA flag turned on, and then he will believe you that you are Google in this example. The solution, never use MD5. And try to avoid using SHA-1 as well. If the CA chooses the certificate, then this attack, it will not work as is. There might be a variant that will work eventually. But it will not work as is. This is what happens today. Okay, I don't know as well.
Would this attack fail if a CA would automatically check for this, and in terms of changing this one bit in the proposal, in the proposed certificate, and rejecting any certificate that has the same hash as its CA counterpart?
As far as I remember, there is a nonce in the certificate, something that you can that is changeable, and these researchers use this nonce to to make a lot of trials in building their two certificates. So no, it cannot. If it does not know the nonce that was used in the certificate with the CA on, then it will not be able to detect that. The next attack is a host verification attack. Again, this was published by a couple of researchers. I'm not aware of a trial to use this in the field, but it may have been used in the field. In this case, the attacker, he has a certificate. He is devil.com. He's not claiming to be anyone else. He asks a certificate authority for signing his certificate, and it is really who he is, then there is no problem. And now, again, the innocent user goes to devil.com, and the attacker gives him his certificate, but tries to convince him that he is google.com, meaning that he gives him a properly signed certificate, but assumes that the user or the browser will not check, will not verify the continuity that the host that has this, to which this certificate was allocated is really the one that, that this entity on the other side of the line is claiming to be. And it turns out that this does not always work as expected, because browsers in this sense are okay. They do this, what is called host verification as expected. They do it properly. However, other SSL clients of different web services don't necessarily do that as needed. And the result is that these web services, these users of web services, they open SSL connection, they check the certificate, they say they understand it is okay, but they don't connect the host in the certificate to the host that they are speaking with. So it sounds funny. It sounds like it was not supposed to happen, and it really does not supposed to happen. But I think it puts a point on the on an issue that is very recurring in security systems. That there are different people with different understanding. There are the people that understand security and cryptography, but there are many others that do not. And those that don't understand security and cryptography sometimes make mistakes that if you give them the rope to hang themselves, they sometimes will. And in this case, as I said, a research of many different libraries that implement SSL, it turned out that you have to use SSL and you have to tell SSL to make a host verification. And many of the people that use these libraries did not understand exactly what is the API that they are using and how to tell him to do host verification, and didn't understand that they have to activate this host verification. So I think this bullet discusses the libraries that were found to be not well understandable. JSSC, OpenSSL, GNU TLS, and others. And it seems that in many cases, applications that use these libraries did not use them properly. Now again, remember, we're talking about the chain. There is no difference in between breaking the hash, breaking RSA, or breaking the host validation, or breaking the CA. This is a chain. once you are able to break the chain somewhere, you can convince anyone that you are anyone. Okay, any questions about this part? Good. So the next sequence of attacks is the attacks on the data protection part of SSL, what is called sometimes the record protocol. And again, if we talk about a chain of algorithms or things that have to happen in order to keep the authentication scheme secure, and on the other side of the record protocol, we have two algorithms that have to be kept secure, then we have another assumption that we're making and we're not thinking about it, which is what I call the black box assumption. We think that the browser is a black box, and we think that the server is a black box. But in practical application, in practical circumstances, this is not the case. This is far from being the case. And this is, I think, one of the main reasons that commercial systems are being attacked and vulnerabilities are found over and over, because they're not black boxes. They get messages, they get malware, things happen in them that are not necessarily in the control of the owner of the applications. And we'll see a couple of examples for how this is used, how this black box assumption does not hold and does not keep from SSL from being hacked. So this is a list of, except for the first one, we have another 6 attacks. All of them were published in the last 2 or 3 years about SSL. All of them essentially were able to steal data that was protected with SSL, either from the client side or from the server side. In the client side case, it is usually the session cookie. After you authenticate to your bank, there is a session cookie in your browser that is, it is considered as the holy grail for web attackers, because if they have the session cookie, they can access the bank and impersonate you, which is something that is, sounds cool. From the server to the clients, there is different types of information that are important, like CSRF tokens and things like that. I will not elaborate about exactly which data the server says that can be a secret, but believe me that there is. So I will discuss something that I call the HSR model. You will not see this anywhere else. It is just something that I use to explain the concept of these attacks. The plain text is a combination of something that is secret and something that is known under the same key. So I call it as HSR because it is kind of header, where this header is in all cases known, in some cases can be chosen or at least influenced by the attacker, which is concatenated with a secret. And then maybe it is concatenated with something else that is not in the control of anyone. We can think about it as kind of random. Now, we talked about 4 different security models. We know that AES is super secure in all these models. What can we tell about AES in this model? The fact is that nothing. AES, and actually no block cipher or stream cipher or any cipher, says anything about protection in this situation. And in fact, when you have this HSR model, in most of the cases, you will have a weak system. So whenever someone is able to come to the SSL case, this communication between browser and server, and make it an HSR system, then he can win. He can steal the protected data, and we'll see that in the next couple of slides. So how does the HSR attack works? So suppose you have this H star, which is one header, and then there is the secret, S star, and there is some random. We encrypt it, and think about this left part as being divided into blocks. We're talking now about block ciphers. So what we'll see, on the other hand, we will see C star, which is the encryption of the first block. The next thing we do, I remind you that we have control over H, over the header. So we will try to prolong it with 1 byte, and in each time we will add a different byte. So we have 256 different combinations of this byte. And we make sure that H star was exactly 15 bytes, which means that the last byte will exactly complete to a complete block. And now we know that was true in ECB, but this is true also in CBC, that if the first couple of blocks are identical in the plain text, then the first couple of blocks are identical also in the ciphertext. This is because of the reason that all the encryption doesn't have dependency in bytes that are to come, only in bytes that you already seen. So we now have these 256 different encryptions, and we see these C0 to C255. And we can assume that one of them will be identical to C star. And the reason is, of course, that one of these exactly match the first byte of S star. And if one of them, and the one that matches, we will see one of these C values to be exactly identical to C star, and we know what is the byte. So I hope that in this slide, in this diagram flow, I convinced you that in the HSR model, it is very, very easy to recover, to extract a single byte of S star. But if you're able to recover the first byte of S star, then you can probably use this method over and over and recover the other bytes of S star. And this is exactly the attack on HSR. The requirements for this attack to be applicable are the following. It is in the right bottom corner. All the encryptions have to go through the same key. Different key, nothing works. All the encryptions have to be on the same secret, because if there is different secrets, then you got one byte of it, but what about the others? And the last one, that you have to have this HSR model being in place. If you have these three requirements, then you're on the go. You can break any cipher. So let me talk about the attack setup, which means what is the attacker needs to do in order to be able to mount this attack on SSL. So there is an application server. There is the user, the browser. The application server sends a session cookie. The session cookie has the HTTP only flag, which means that JavaScript cannot access it. It has also the secure flag, which means that it cannot be transmitted over non-SSL connections. And now the user has this session cookie in the browser. The attacker is able to cause a man-in-the-middle situation, as I said, either through malicious Wi-Fi hotspot or by DNS poisoning. And he now runs his own JavaScript code inside the browser. And this JavaScript code can generate as many requests as he likes to the application server, but not to the remember, the browser is now connected to the bank. It has a session cookie with the bank. And now from this JavaScript can send messages to the bank. These messages will never arrive to the bank because the attacker is a man in the middle, so we will stop them. But he will send many messages and exactly implement this HSR model, because he sees one message, he understands exactly what is the next byte of the secret, and then he will build another message and will run it again in the JavaScript. And this is the setup of the attack. So the attacker needs two things: one, to be man in the middle, and two, to run JavaScript inside the browser. And he's on. So the first attack that was published, I think, in 2011. It's called the Beast attack. It is browser exploit against SSL TLS. It is based on the fact that the CBC IV, the initialization vector that is used for CBC encryption, in each record is the last ciphertext of the previous record. And And this is, it uses the fact that this is an HSR situation. As I said, it requires man in the middle, which can be either passive or active. That depends how important it is for you that the real application will not see all the requests. Because if your bank sees a couple of thousand of requests that seems improper, then it probably will block it. So an active attacker can mask the real server from seeing all these requests. It has to run malicious code in the browser, and it has to use fixed key and fixed secret. In our case, this secret is a session cookie. The attack, as I said, HSR attacked. It has a known and predicted IV. And the way it works, that the attacker, the way it influences what I called the header, the H part, is it can make it whatever he wants because he knows what was the previous ciphertext. Then he knows what is the next IV. And he knows that the IV is stored to the plaintext in order to generate the first bytes that are encrypted. And he can reverse this process and cause the H to be exactly what he wants it to be. Okay? What are the countermeasures against the beast attack? First, there is something that is called the same origin policy, which is web application protection that is supposed to prevent JavaScript from one application to send requests to other applications. In some cases it works, in other cases it does not work. That depends on, there are several ways to bypass it. But theoretically it would have been supposed to block this attack. Another mitigation is to randomize the IV, meaning that every message that is sent encrypted with the same key will have a couple of bytes at the beginning which are not cannot be affected by the attacker. There are several ways to do that. The first one is if you send an empty record, and then this empty record, it has a message authentication code, which is essentially random, so it is hard to predict. Or you can put the first byte of the message in the first record, and then again, this attack is not applicable. There is this attack, by the way, was theoretically developed like in 2002, I think. But it was considered as a theoretical one. And it was surprising for some that it was actually proven to be practical a couple of years ago. So TLS 1.1, one of the reasons it was developed is exactly to prevent this attack, to mitigate it. However, yes? However, most of the web servers do not support TLS 1.1. And the reason that TLS 1.1 prevents that because you have to add some kind of random nonce to every message and not keep the prefix fixed. Another way to mitigate it is to make sure that you refresh the key on every record that you encrypt. Now, since AES is very secure, so you can use the same key to encrypt as many messages as you like. On the other hand, RC4 is stream cipher. In stream cipher, you must not encrypt two messages with the same key, so you have to change the key, to replace the key on every message. So if you use RC4, then you are not vulnerable to this particular attack. Yes?
One slide back. In the previous diagram, I just missed the same origin. Where is the different origin part happening?
The attacker, in this case, he sends you Java. You are now logged to the bank. You have the session cookie of the bank, and the attacker now connects you to. He sends you a JavaScript, but he cannot convince you that the JavaScript belongs to the bank. He convinces you that the JavaScript belongs to another another service. Okay, he can convince you that it belongs to the bank, but only with an insecure connection, with no SSL of the bank. And then if it tries to send the message to the bank, then it will, in many cases, it will not work. Because this cookie that he wants to get will not be sent.
Because he's the man in the middle?
The attacker is the man in the middle, yes.
Where's the middle in this?
Ah, okay. The attacker resides both here, as man in the middle, and here, as JavaScript inside the browser, but not in the context of the secure connection with the bank. Okay, the next attack is called the crime. I think it was published about 1 year after the beast. Compression ratio info leak made easy. Okay, they are good with names. And the idea is the following. Compression ratio depends on similarity of data segments to themselves. In particular in Lempel-Ziv-like ciphers with context adaptive compression. Thus, for example, AB, AB, AB will compress better than AB, AB, AC because of this repetition. And encryption algorithms never claimed to mask the length of the data. Of the data. So remember that you compress, and then you encrypt. So if you compress and then encrypt, then if you can say something about the compression, if you can make the length of the message a hint on the content of the message, then you might be able to reveal something. And this is exactly how the crime attack works. Again, the attacker is man in the middle, and it also has malicious code in the browser. Again, it needs that the attack will be on a fixed key and the fixed secret. And as you understand, it is if the attacker has an influence on the, it has, again, like the HSR model, it has an influence on the content that is encrypted. And again, we have a secret there that is constant, is fixed, and is used in every message. So we are getting a leak. If we're getting a leak on the same secret over and over, then eventually we'll be able to recover this, secret. And this is essentially what happens. This is one slide that tries to show the entire attack. So the attacker makes okay. So the attacker resides here, and also and this is a connection with the bank. The bank is on the top. The crime JavaScript runs inside the browser and tries to make influence. To generate different headers, different known prefix that he controls. And now the attacker also can measure, he measures the length of the encrypted message, and then he gets a hint on the length of the non-encrypted message, and then he understands if it compressed well or not. Let me try to explain this through an example. Oh. Okay, so we're short in time. Oh, how much time do I have? 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. So the idea is that, again, the attacker, we're trying to implement this HSR model. The attacker starts with, okay, suppose that the header is ABCD, ABC. And now the attacker wants to know whether, what is the first byte of the secret. Then he will now try to change this fourth character and then generate many, many messages. And eventually, if he sees if, for example, the first byte of the secret was X, then the moment he will have ABCX, ABC, then when concatenated to the secret, we will have ABCX, ABCX, which compresses well. If it compresses well, then the attacker will be able to see it by measuring the length of the ciphertext and through it of the plain text. Okay, so this is essentially how it works. The immediate countermeasure is to disable compression in the browser, which is exactly what happened when this attack was published. And this attack works regardless of whether you use the block cipher or stream cipher. This is another version of this attack that was developed by people from Imperva. The right one is my boss. Yeah. I will skip it because we don't have time. I will skip also this one. Okay, as a result of this, sequence of attacks, then people start saying, okay, so if AES is a problem, CBC is a problem, let's use RC4. So people in the, like me, that are in this industry were like, what? RC4? It is like 10 times weaker than other ciphers. And indeed, RC4 has many vulnerabilities. It is known to be problematic. It leaks key information into the stream. It leaks. It has very severe biases. The first hundreds of bytes that RC4 uses are totally biased. And it is very easy to distinguish RC4 from random streams. The common practice of using RC4 is just take the first couple of hundred of bytes and just throw them away and don't use them because they're just not good enough. And indeed, an attack came up like a couple of months after this recommendation was made. The attacker, again, is man in the middle. He runs something in the browser, and he convinces it to encrypt over and over. And he just uses a statistical attack on the ciphertext. So if you encrypt the same message over and over, then eventually all the statistical biases that you have will shine through the message, and you will be able to discover it. So the countermeasure here is, of course, to use AES. This is a kind of, I tried to summarize all these attacks, and I didn't talk about the Lucky 13, which is based on a concept that is called the padding oracle attack, which is also interesting. And I think the one that is most, that didn't get proper addressing or mitigation is the last one, which is called breach, browser reconnaissance and exfiltration via what? I don't know, via what? Via hypertext, which the idea of it is to use, I explained how you can use the compression of the request to reveal information, secret information for the request. So you could block you could stop making compression on the request. Now the breach attack actually relies on the compression of the response. The compression of the response is actually an HTML page. You cannot really stop compressing HTML, because then you will have to process much more bytes, and you will have severe influence on the bandwidth of all applications. And the breach attacks is actually something that I'm not familiar with the proper mitigation that makes us secure against it. Okay, so that's about it. I will not talk about Heartbleed, because this is not this is a attack on SSL, but not cryptographic one. And that concludes my talk.